Hi, 6th grade. For our lesson this week, we're going to talk about a traditional folk painting style from Mexico. This is called Amate Bark Painting. Come on down to the board and you'll see how we're going to get started. So if you watched the video, that link that I sent to you, and if you explored the webpage link, you will know that Amate Bark Painting is a way of creating paper from the bark of several different kinds of trees. Once the bark is created, they dye it different colors, and they take that pulp and they smash it all together, a little more delicately than what I'm saying, to make a painting. And they paint with the bark that is colored the different colors. We're going to use actual paint for ours, and we're going to try and replicate that bark look by using either a paper grocery bag, or sometimes when you get something shipped to you from companies, they have this crinkled up brown paper inside of it. So this will work perfectly for us for this bark effect. To get started, you need to have some kind of theme. Folk art is often thought of as not being as fancy as fine art, but I think it's lovely. And any of the designs that you create out of something that's inspired by folk art are very simple. The designs are very simple. So I think that will work perfectly for us. We don't have to worry about getting too far into the trenches and making things very, very detailed. We're just going to do some simple designs. Often birds and flowers and leaves are very stylized, are very simplified, and they make some interesting designs for our bark painting. But I'm going to draw the dog that I have. And again, I'm going to use marker because pencil doesn't show up so well on this yellow paper. And he's going to be the center of my bark painting. Now, what do you decide to put around the outside edge? Well, that's completely up to you. I'm going to draw a little bit of vine. I'm going to draw a little bit of vine on all sides. And then let's add some flowers. We could just do some traditional elementary school daisies. Now you can see I finished up my flowers and added just a few leaves to make it a little more interesting. Alright, this is going to be the basic theme or subject of my picture. I'm going to put that aside for just a few minutes, and I'm going to come back to that brown paper bag. If you have brown paper bag or the brown packing material that's sometimes inside boxes, what you're going to do next is you're just going to tear out a piece. I don't necessarily want to have this perfectly smooth edge that I would get with the scissors. I'm going to tear it because I like that uneven edge. That's called a decal edge, and that's actually something that paper makers really look forward to having. It makes the paper look fancy, because it is, because it's handmade. That's what makes the paper made like this so special. Alright, I'm going to use this piece. It's a little uneven. It's not the exact same size as the picture that I originally drew, but I think it will be perfect. So I'm going to take my paper, flip it over, and I am going to transfer my design onto the brown paper. And you don't necessarily need to watch that in real time. Why don't we watch that in time lapse? Alright, so I'm hoping that you're thinking about gathering up some paints. If you don't have any paint available to you, you can use markers, you can use crayons, whatever kind of supplies that you have. We're going to use some paint here at the school, and if you know, you see these little temper paint cakes that we're going to use for our project. They're a little messy looking, but they paint wonderfully, and this will be good because we really want that paint to pop off the paper a little bit. But before I do any painting at all, I'm going to do the most dastardly thing I can think of to this cute little puppy dog. I'm going to crumple them all up. I know it's terrible, but I actually want you to crumple the paper, and I want you to uncrumple it probably 5 or 6 times. Because can you hear this? Did you hear that sound? That's the sound of unbroken paper fibers. What I want to have is I want to have a nice soft sound So the more I crumple it and the more I uncrumple it, the softer this paper is going to get. You're going to break up all those tense paper fibers, and you're going to get that little bit of crumpled look that Amate paper gets. Texture that's formed when the paper is pressed in the way that they do when they make the Amate paper, where they press it down with a stone. So you get that little textural look going on. Can you hear it now? Let's see what it sounded like before. Remember what it sounded like before? And now we want a nice soft sounding paper. So really crunch it up really nice and tight. Just don't tear it. You don't want to tear the whole paper, especially not if you've done all this work on it. Once you've got it crumpled up and nice and distressed looking, it's time to paint. So as you can see, as the paint starts to dry, the paper bag, or in this case the brown paper that I'm using, does start to absorb the water, and you will see these little like halo rings around your painting where you've painted these areas. Nothing to be concerned about. That's just the water evaporating away from the paint. Once it dries completely, the pigment will be left behind, the color, the thing that makes it the color, will stay behind, and all of this will dry up and you won't even see it. And actually will make your colors pop a little bit more. There are a few finishing up steps that I would like for you to look at. Now, of course, we painted our little puppy dog white because he is a West Highland Terrier, and they are known to be just white, and that is the only color they are, unless they've rolled around in the mud and the grass, and then they're brown and green, but that's another story. It has covered up my marker lines, so what I would probably do as soon as he dries is I'm going to come back in with those markers and I'm going to touch up the little lines again so that I can definitely see all those outlines. The last thing you can do, and even though I didn't draw it ahead of time, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to add some polka dots, just, you know, to give it a little bit more kick. The one thing that I do like the best about a traditional folk art style of painting is there's not a lot of mixing or blending or fussing going on. You're not really worried about getting things to look too particular on the paper. You're not trying to make colors that have never been seen before and things that are blending and look like shaded or shadows. You really want to use just the colors straight out of the container, or in our case straight out of the little pan, so that all my temper paint colors are pure and clean and simple. And I think we're going to call him finished. So as soon as this guy dries, I'm going to come back around and you'll see me outline him, but I'm going to call him a finished bark painting. And that's appropriate because he's a puppy dog. So there you go, bark bark. Haha. Alright, you can see where I have come back in and I've outlined around the puppy dog again with the black Sharpie. If I'm going to touch up some of these leaves, I can. It's just to make sure we see that center ribbing area. This is an optional step, but I really do think it makes it look a little bit more finished when you can see the outlining that you did. And last but not least, we enjoy this crinkled up texture thing that we've got going on, but here at the school we're going to take an iron and just barely warm iron, and we're actually going to press this out flat so that you have a nice crinkled textury appearance, but the paper isn't quite so lumpy and bumpy. I think I'm going to flip it over to do that. This iron is probably one of the oldest irons in the history of irons, just past the stage where they used to just heat it up into a fire. But, you know, it works really well, and, you know, these older styles actually last pretty much forever. So there we go. Now we have a nice pressed out flat project, and here is our example of Amate Bark Painting. Good job, 6th grade. Don't forget to turn it in so I can check it out for a grade. Okay, thanks for joining me. Hey, don't forget when you finish your project that you need to upload it to the Google Classroom to submit it as an assignment, and you should probably take a picture of it and put it in your digital portfolio because that will need to be turned in at the end of the quarter. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you soon.